Hello everyone. Introducing DeepTech Talk with Sunil that delves into the minds of entrepreneurs, investors, and inspiring leaders to uncover the story of deep tech towards bringing it to the society.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Sunil. I welcome you all to the second session of the series that I'm driving, podcast, Deep Tech podcast with Sunil. Last time we had one of the founder from Deep Tech, the Solar Lab, Siddharth, who shared his story around building it from being a grad to exiting in a very early stage. Early stage as an age of the founder. He exited to a US entity and shared all his journey, all his experiences of taking the business right from the idea to a certain stage where people sitting in US started valuing him. Today we have got somebody who's on the other side of the table, who have had a very diverse experience in terms of the industry, and not just the industry but also geographically. This guy is very well spread. I can definitely tell you that this guy is travel most of the time. You will find him on the airports and in the planes. So I welcome you, Chirag, a very dear friend based in Dubai. So Chirag, before we begin the conversation, I would definitely request you to make a short introduction about you and what really made you get into the startups, what really excites you.
Thanks a lot, Sunil. I heard your previous podcast. It was amazing. And I've been following SanchiConnect. It's an amazing initiative as a whole. Love the entire concept. Love the service that you're offering. Coming to me, I'll talk about my quick background in 30 seconds. I actually was a management consultant for about 11 years, and I worked around 11 countries. And it was a very exciting experience. About half of the time was spent on setting up government policies on startup policies, frameworks, and grants that government needs to follow. And it was consistently a very interesting experience. Some of my very interesting experiences happened in Singapore and in Saudi Arabia. And I say very interesting because they were very contrast in experience, but they taught me so much about what all that can happen in the startup ecosystem. Post that, I became the strategy director for a company called Careem, which is very similar to Ola in India. Careem does exactly more or less the same thing in the Middle Eastern region. And fortunately, we did amazing job. We got acquired by Uber for $3.1 billion in 2020, right before COVID. Very exciting journey at Careem. And then I joined a venture capital firm called 500 Global, which is a San Francisco-based VC firm with about $2 billion plus AUM. Great experience, learned a lot. And I was spending a lot of time in Saudi for 500 Global, and I built the conviction at that time that deep tech, which is right now a very underrepresented startup ecosystem, is the place to be. And that is the place that's going to make a change or a massive dent in the overall ecosystem. And that's where you can make a profit while offering sustainable solution to the industries and probably transform the economies. So I probably took more than 30 seconds, but that's a longer introduction about me.
Thank you. So Chirag, starting with consulting, moving into a startup which was very well established, and then going for the startup side of the story, and that too within deep tech. Why deep tech then? I personally feel, somebody who's driving an ecosystem in the deep tech for a long time, I think it's one of the most complicated ecosystem. How did deep tech got you inside?
Let me first tell you the conviction behind deep tech, and then I'll tell you how I landed up with deep tech. So if you look at the US ecosystem, in the last 5 years, only if I go back about 7-8 years back, only less than 5% of the investments used to happen in the deep tech ecosystem out of the startup overall investments, which is now has shot up to 25% approximately in US. Europe had a similar trend. It's somewhere around the COVID time that it shot up to around 23%. China had the exact same trend that it shot up somewhere around 27, 28%. India, on the contrary, right now sits at 7%. And Asia as a whole sits at somewhere around 5% of investments go, excluding China, Asia as a whole, somewhere around 5% of the investments go into the deep tech ecosystem. Now, the interesting part was, even though everyone is talking about startups, everyone is talking about technology, the market is starting to get saturated for the general or soft tech. Because what a lot of startups are building, you and I can sit down and we can build that in probably a couple of months, if not a year. Then the difference between those guys and us is only who has more marketing dollars to win the game. And if that's a race, I don't want to win. I don't even want to win that. That's not even a fun race for me to run. What the fun race is, let's compete about who has a more solid and higher quality product. That is 10x better than everything else that is available in the market. That if you don't take that product, you will feel that you have failed. Let's talk about Google. Like, Google came up with a strategy, like at one point of time, it was a deep tech solution when they started with the search engine, and the solution was 10x better. And for every product they launched, it was 10x better. So now this is where the conviction comes. The overall global ecosystem is moving. Asia has not yet moved, but it has started showing early signs of moving towards deep tech. And that led me to the conviction that deep tech is the place to be. Now, your second part of the question was, okay, fine, you wanted to be in the deep tech ecosystem, but how come am I the right fit to do the deep tech investments? We discussed that for months or maybe quarters internally before we started this firm together with my partner. And the realization was, even if we get the PhDs from some of the best universities, there will always be a 21-year-old boy or a girl who will come to our office with a pitch deck with a technology that we have absolutely no idea about.
Very true, very true.
And then we'll be spending like 15 days going through it, trying to figure out what does it even mean? What is this guy talking about? Because that exactly is deep tech, that you have to acknowledge that you cannot know more than the startup founder. And you will never know the technology more than any of the startup founders that you're investing into. However, you need to have the conviction. Are you willing to read like crazy every night for 2 hours every night about new technology and scratch your head that what exactly are we talking about? Are you open to call professors and look humble in front of them that I really want to learn this? Are you comfortable standing in front of a startup and saying that I don't know what you're talking about? Please explain it to me third time, because first 2 times you explained, I still didn't get it. And trying to be humble, I think we realize that we do have that skill set to acknowledge that we don't know a lot of things in life, including my partners acknowledge that we don't know a lot of things in life. They are much older to me, all my partners. When I say much older, one is 5 years older, one is 10 years older. And even in their late 40s, they are like, actually, we don't know what are we talking about. So that skill or that competency of saying that we don't know gave us the right skill set to actually venture into the deep tech ecosystem. If I would have said that, no, I need the right skill set or I need to be a edtech expert before I start, then maybe edtech is a better place for me.
So, but in that case, Chirag, isn't it a little more complicated in that case when you, I mean, what really drives you take those calls in that case?
What really, so there are 3 components of deep tech startups. First is the problem that you're solving. Is the problem even real? And is this a problem big enough or complicated enough for people to pay money? That's a first part of it. Second part is how much capital is available and will be available to solve the problem. And third part is, what is the solution that we're talking about? Is this solution viable or not? Is this solution 10x better or not? Yeah. Now, for the first part, the problem part, given me and our partners came from different industries, different backgrounds, and we have done different kind of work over 10, 20 years of our career, we realized that we may not have answer to is the problem big enough or not, but we do have sufficient industry connections and sufficient ability to research on the problem statement that is it big enough or not. Yeah. So that's the first part, which is the problem part of it.
Yep.
So we are pretty confident we can evaluate the problem at least in certain parts of deep tech and certain technologies. Very, very confident of that.
Yeah.
Second part comes the capital part. We have access to VC ecosystem globally. We do know at the bare minimum, I would say 150 plus VCs worldwide. So when we do have a conviction about a startup, we can bring along other VCs as well. And SanchiConnect is doing a great job doing the same thing right now in a more organized way, what we do in a more informal way. So that gives us a visibility. Is there sufficient capital available now? And will there be sufficient capital available in the future? Then the third part is the solution part of it. Is this solution 10x better or not? Which is the hardest part to crack, because there are thousands of solutions people are building, might be building for this problem right now. And even for professors, when we go to them, it's very difficult. So what we have done is we have built relationship with multiple universities in India and outside India, especially like IITs or IISc, where or expert networks, where we can at least give them a call and have a conversation with them and get their perspective and get some reading material. We may not read the entire thing because there might be a PhD behind that, but at least understand what are we talking about. Is this significantly better or not? Even after all the reading of the solution, even after getting access to professors, industry networks, and capital, at the end of the day, I don't know if I can say this or not. It's a call from the gut. Do I believe that these founders can solve this problem with this solution and make money in the future? At the end of the day, you're talking from your gut. You will do research. It's a guided. These are the guidance that you use. You will do your readings. You will do your analysis, and that's why you will notice that conducting a DD on a round for a deep tech firm, a deep tech startup, typically can take up to 6 months. Versus if you give me a edtech solution or a consumer tech solution, there are VCs that can close it in a week, because there's no rocket science. The solution, I've heard it like 2,000 times. I only need to worry about probably what is the finer nuance and maybe the founders. So that's where we felt that we are open, we are building the right connections. And at the end of the day, yes, we will do the research. We are doing our network access, but yes, we are taking the call from the gut, which is probably very sensitive thing to say in the VC system, but I'm sure a lot of people agree to that.
Yeah, and Chirag, on this point, I would also like to share one experience that I had in my previous roles, driving one of the largest deep tech mentorship program in my previous role at NASCOM. One thing which I was always looking at, and I was observing it for a long time, that definitely the funding flow in deep tech ecosystem was not so great compared to any other domain. And to me, one of the solution which was actually a driving factor for me to conceptualize SanchiConnect was, can we get some industry, the core technology leaders who understands those technologies, validate that, make even a small check size like a $10,000, right? Just bringing the skin in the game, ensuring the rest of the people like you that, boss, I can validate it. I am putting on my own money. Right, so definitely that can be one level of confidence that can give the VCs like you to start taking these proposals more seriously and more confidently.
And absolutely, and if I may add, actually IITs are doing a fantastic job on that, because like some of the IITs also are empowered to make investments. And because A, it's a government money, and B, they have access to probably the best of the finest of the brains in the world. Their technical analysis and technical due diligence is probably way sharper than our technical due diligence.
I'm sure. Yeah.
They may not have is probably the understanding of the capital market or the how big is the problem statement. But when it comes to the solution, when IITs put in some grants or some money into the startup that we are looking at, I would not say it fully validates, but it significantly validates the solution that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And especially IIT Delhi, Bombay, and Chennai have done fantastic job, because you can give them a call if you have a relationship. I can give them a call a lot of times and get their feedback on the solution. And if they have incubated or have touched that startup, they'll give you a very authentic feedback on the solution, which is amazing.
Well, that's something which is needed, very much needed in the ecosystem, especially in the funding environment to be more strengthened. I mean, these kind of initiatives will definitely help going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Chirag, moving on to the next point now. How does the deep tech impact industries in your perception? And it will be really great to hear some perspective on Indian industries and the overall society the overall societal changes.
I'll take two examples. So, okay, before I take examples, let me tell you some statistics. 97% of deep tech startups are aligned with at least one SDG goal right now. So to answer your question, how do they impact the societies? 97%, and this is a UN statistics, this is not Chirag Gupta statistics. According to UN, deep tech startup ecosystem are already, irrespective of what solution you're building, 97% of them are aligned to make an impact to the society. That is one. Now, zooming it down to India, let me talk about clean tech and industry 4.0 with some examples. Clean tech, which typically includes water, sanitation, hygiene, these are massive, big problems in India right now. And the solutions or the startups or the technology that have been revolving around startup ecosystem in the last decade have not touched on that. Deep tech startups have started looking at how to solve the Indian water problem. And when I say Indian water, sanitation, and hygiene problem, taking the example of a startup called Solinas, what Solinas does, they improve the sanitation of Indian ecosystem. They built a robot to replace manual cleaning of septic tank. They have also built a robot to analyze where exactly is the water pipeline leakage or where will be the water pipeline leakage in the municipality pipes, which is a massively big problem in the Indian ecosystem. And I'm sure when you travel, you notice that there's always gadda khuda hua hai, which is because the current system of repairing the municipality pipes is very manual. So what they have done, they are changing exactly how you repair the municipality water pipes, which is a big problem in the Indian ecosystem. You may not see it, but because it's below the road, but it is a big problem.
So, but Chirag, I have a question. Sorry to intervene you here. I'm very sorry for this. But I have seen personally that a lot of VCs are not very open with the startups making government money. I mean, that becomes a little tricky situation for the VCs to move ahead with those deal flow. What is your take on that?
Let me first explain what is the industry general perception that I've heard, and let me clarify the nuance on that. If you are a B2G startup, generally the nuanced feeling is that I am cautious on what you are going to do, because if the government change, if state government, municipality government, or national central government changes in India, you might lose your contract. And even if the government decides not to pay you for whatever work you've done or whatever happens, you practically have no power to do anything. So because you're so helpless when you're doing B2G. Having said that, some of the startups actually, like the Solinas, going back to Solinas again, what they realized was it is going to be a problem to do B2G. However, you can always do B2B2G, i.e. there are existing contracts with long-term relationships with the government authorities. Instead, and these guys liaison with the government even if the governments change. Instead of going to the government directly and dealing with the government regulations and aligning with everything over there, which is a lot of time, they can become your channel partner or service providers. So Solinas right now works with Jamadar Association, for example, to distribute their septic tank cleaning robots. And they are empowering existing Jamadar on how to use a robot instead of you going inside the septic tank. How can you put the robot inside and manually control that robot to get the work done? So they have not disrupted the existing ecosystem and value chain, but they have empowered the existing contractors to do their job better.
Yeah.
So that's a fine line between dealing with the government. But you are right. If your only client is the government, and especially if your only client is only one government, maybe it could be a state government or a national government, or it could be Indian defense or anything. If it's only one government that you're relying on, then you're putting too much at risk, because the moment government change, I might lose the entire money, because the new governments might have someone new favorite.
Yeah. Great. No, thanks. That's a great perspective, Chirag. I'm sure this will help a lot of the founders who are dealing with the government projects. Now, in my recent visit to Dubai, Chirag, and we had a great time together there. There were a lot of different perspectives coming in from the VC side towards various startup ecosystems existing in different geographies, different countries. I really want to understand from you, what is your observation about India versus the rest of the Asian countries?
And when you say my perspective, you're talking about my perspective specifically on fundraising or quality of startup, or which area?
Both.
So let's talk about the fundraising for Indian deep tech startup ecosystem versus rest of the world. Raising money for Indian deep tech is way harder than raising money for a similar startup sitting in the US or Europe or China or Singapore. And in that particular order, it's US, Europe, China, Singapore, and then probably India. So it's way harder. And the valuations are significantly lower, generally in the tune of 4 to 5x lower for Indian startups versus the US startups working on similar technology, which makes the fundraising an extremely difficult task for the startup founders.
Yeah.
Now, before I come to the quality side of the question, sometimes it's good because that forces them to think about how they're going to make it profitable in the short term while rapidly scaling with a little amount of capital that the VCs have provided. And that push to profitability comes a lot earlier than the US startups, that start thinking about profitability somewhere around Series C and beyond. So, which is like a blessing in disguise. I see it like that. And given the overall world VC ecosystem is changing towards profitability slowly, this is a very good blessing, because a lot of US, European, and Chinese startups are, especially at the early stage of deep tech, they are not skilled to actually make profits or even be cash positive for that matter for the first 5 years or 7 years or till they hit Series C. So from that standpoint, yes, capital is a problem, but it's a good problem. Second side is the quality of startups. Quality of startups is very good for Indian deep tech ecosystem, and it's very comparable to the US deep tech ecosystem. However,
it's a bold statement, by the way.
Yes, but let me complete the however part. The harder part, the C-suite is probably Indian deep tech startups typically have a better, because they come from some of the top universities. They understand the real problem on the ground, and they are trying to solve a real problem on the ground. But in the Indian startup ecosystem, the next layer is a big challenge for the deep tech startups, because they can't afford to pay the international salaries or global salaries to acquire extremely high quality people that are needed to run the startup as a machinery. However, because US startups have a lot of fundraising power, they can acquire exceptionally talented people at the next layer as well, which gives them a lot more horsepower than the Indian deep tech startups.
Yeah. Great. So now, one important question, which I'm sure the audience would be very keen to understand: what really makes you take a call in terms of making an investment? What are the driving factors for 8x venture, as in investing in Indian startups?
So 3 things I talked about: the problem, capital, and the solution. But I will add 2 more things to that. First is, are you doing a global proof of value, or are you doing a local proof of concept? And when I say local proof of concept, basically means going to a company and validating your technology works. And global proof of value means that your product is valuable is in not just in India or globally. So that's the first thing. And we in the first thing we look for global proof of value, not just a local proof of concept. Second thing is a sustainable competitive advantage. Okay, you do have a lot of deep tech startups have a competitive advantage, and which is a first mover advantage, or they have access to some resource which is not easily available. But the question comes is the sustainable competitive advantage. Can you sustain that competitive advantage for the years to come or decades to come? Can your technology will continue to evolve to be 10x better than every other technology that is built or will be built for the next 5 years, let's say? If you can stay ahead of the curve, and if you can keep pushing in that direction, then yes, we want to go ahead and have a serious conversation. But if those two answers are not clear to us, then we don't go ahead with that.
Got it. So in one of the recent conversation where you were one of the speaker, I heard you saying the PMF thing for the how important the PMF is for you as an evaluator for those investment deals. So help us understand that a little more in depth.
First of all, one also probably I can't specifically remember that conversation, but let me tell you, PMF is a very, very vague term. And what you mean with a PMF might be very different how I define a PMF. So when I probably said that PMF is important, and more likely than not, I probably meant that you are generating value. And I'm using the word value because PMF probably is a vaguer term, but when you say you are creating value and you are able to capture the value, which is the most specific definition that I look at. However, I know we get a lot of pitches saying that we have achieved PMF or we have almost achieved PMF. And the question that immediately I ask is exactly what have you achieved when you say in PMF? Have you created value, or what exactly is PMF? And one of the interesting argument that I had with someone recently is, has Uber achieved a PMF? And he said yes. And I said, but Uber is a loss-making company. Then how do you define PMF if it's a loss-making company despite being operating for 10 years almost now? So is that your definition of PMF, that you're able to sell, or is your definition of PMF is that you are able to sell at a price that will generate profits? So the definition itself is very vague, and it's an ongoing battle.
And I think that the range in which early stage investment happen, I mean, it's very, very tricky to identify whether a startup has reached that level or they will be able to reach that stage or not. And that's a very, 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 very thin zone for you to decide on.
Absolutely. You have no idea. And you can always pretend that you are in control, but a lot of times you don't know a lot of things. And even if you get a finest brain, you will interview the experts. You will reduce a lot of vagueness in your plans, and by talking to the experts, you can kill a lot of reasons to fail. But always new things will come up which you have no idea about. You have never thought about it. Those things never happened. There might be a strike in Egypt. No one imagined a war between Russia and Ukraine, which has impacted an entire Ukrainian startup ecosystem and Russian startup ecosystem.
Yeah, very true. So one last question, Chirag, and it is little selfish question and very much in the interest of my personal, my own organization. What do you think a platform like SanchiConnect, now you are one of the earliest user of the platform, your team, you and everyone. What do you think? I mean, how are we making a difference? And do you think this is something which will really help people like you going forward make better decisions and collaborate better with the ecosystem? How is SanchiConnect positioned to you?
So SanchiConnect has two values. First is on the startup side, and second, finding the co-investor side. So startup side is that yes, we can find startups using institutions and our own connections, but the startup ecosystem is always evolving, and a big part of the VC ecosystem is always hunting. So, and there will always be some great startups that will miss out. Having something like a SanchiConnect is great because you are constantly hunting for VCs, and you're an open source platform. I can go into your platform and I will always find some startup which I have not received directly. And having access to that resource is very critical in this fast evolving startup ecosystem. So that is the startup side of the story, which I believe SanchiConnect in the short span of probably 6 months have done a fantastic job in the
2.5 months, Chirag. 2.5 months of our existence.
2.5 months. You guys have scaled massively. I got the impression that probably it's 6 months already now, but the scaling has been very rapid. The number of startups that you guys have is comparable to how much typical matured VCs typically have. So that's a great job that you guys have done, and your team has done a great job on that. That is the first side of it. Second side of it is finding co-investors. A big part of the problem is you have found a great deal. Now you want to do a $1.5 million round, and I together with one more VC, which I may know personally, is ready to put in $1 million. Now, to close the round and to stitch it together, you need another $500,000. When I go on SanchiConnect, I can see approximately 60 to 70 VCs right now that are registered on that. And via SanchiConnect, I can communicate to the other VCs that we are actively looking at this and we are actively going ahead on this, create a FOMO amongst other VCs, or have a genuine, serious conversation with the other VCs that we are moving it, and it becomes a bit more structured. Without SanchiConnect, right now the process was, okay, this deal is happening. I know 20 VCs. I'll give them a call and I'll talk to them. And I will always miss out someone because he was not available, or there might be a new VC firm which I was not aware of, where I don't have a relationship, or someone in my team had a relationship and that person has left. So that kind of SanchiConnect kind of solves that kind of problem of having relationship with the co-investors. So and it's a great platform on both sides, startup side and the VC side.
Great, thank you so much, Chirag. This sounds great to us. By the way, we are now coming up with a new module on the platform which will be helping the startups and the micro VCs and the VCs support their existing portfolio with the hirings, with the talent from all around the world. So I'm sure that we are hoping that will be a good value addition for all our partners on the platform and off the platform.
Absolutely, that's a great value, and every big VC already does that for their startups. However, micro VCs and the mid-sized VCs, as you rightly pointed out, struggle to help their startups in those areas. So it's a great job, becomes a centralized platform, and to make it best, it's free of cost for us, and I guess for most of the people. So I couldn't have asked for more.
Yeah. Great. It was fantastic conversation with you, Chirag. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this whole chat.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil. It was amazing, and I'm sure we'll do a lot of deals together.
Join SanchiConnect.com to sign your next term sheet where multiple more investors are waiting for you.